All right. Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us. My name is Dylan Hosier, CEO at ICAN, the Israeli American Civic Action Network. Tonight, we are hosting a special briefing for educators and parents about the current operation in Iran by Israel. We have with us a representative from the Israeli government who will introduce momentarily. Um, uh, we are broadcasting this in cooperation and in partnership with our friends at Pure K through 12. We're having a little bit of a technical difficulty down in San Diego with them, and hopefully they will be able to join us. But for now, I will be your host. So before we get started, I do want to do a little bit of housekeeping and just note that for our audience here of K through 12 advocates, I did want to highlight that one of our phenomenal educators, Elizabeth Statmore, published an important article today in the Voice of San Francisco about the California Legislative Diversity Caucuses and how they are standing together to support an important piece of legislation called Assembly Bill 715, which will do many things that are positive with regard to the current surge in anti-Semitism throughout California public schools in K through 12. So highly recommend this article. We will send it in the follow-up with the recording of this briefing. But I want to thank Elizabeth Statmore for writing that and for the Voice of San Francisco for publishing that. That's an important article. So thank you again to one of our great teachers who are advocating in that regard. Next, I want to welcome also, we have with us a couple of parents, Anna and Diana from Northern California. You've seen them on our broadcast in the past. And here in Southern California and Los Angeles, we have a phenomenal educator from LAUSD, Amy Lesserman. So thank you guys for joining. And I'm also very happy to welcome ICANN's Chief Policy Officer and current Vice Mayor of City of Beverly Hills. Joining us tonight in his individual capacity with ICANN, we have John Mirisch. John, I'll go ahead and give you the floor and to introduce our guest tonight.
Well, thanks so much, Dylan, and thank you everyone for being here. I do want to mention that I'm also one of the legislative liaisons for the City of Beverly Hills, and we met last week to voice our support for AB 715, and we continue to try to take a leading role when it comes to legislation against anti-Semitism and also in support of Israel. We are one of the few Jewish majority cities outside of Israel, and we have always taken a leading role when it comes to support of Israel and trying to further relations between the U.S. and Israel. And to that end, I made a statement. I made it at the last council meeting on Tuesday, but also we published it, and we're encouraging elected officials around the state and the country to issue their own statements in support of Israel, especially now in the context of the Iran war. And my statement, I'll read it briefly, says, "Thank you, Israel. The world owes Israel both its support and its gratitude for taking decisive action to stop the Islamo-fascist Iranian regime from acquiring nuclear weapons. The misogynistic, racist Iranian regime has oppressed its own people for almost half a century and has terrorized the Middle East through its jihadi proxies for way too long. Murderous, rogue, theocratic regimes must never be allowed to threaten the world with nuclear weapons. Israel is doing its part to keep nukes out of the hands of fanatical psychopaths. The rest of the world must not dismiss or trivialize the threat from the Iranian regime, which has long demonized the United States as the great Satan and whose national slogan is death to America. The United States, along with the rest of the free world, must stand with Israel in its efforts and share Israel's determination to make the world a safer place." And as said, we at ICANN are encouraging elected officials throughout the country to make their own statements. And with that, it is my pleasure to introduce the Consul for Public Diplomacy and Culture at the Israeli consulate here in Los Angeles, and it is for the entire Pacific Southwest. Yael Aini is a diplomat currently serving as the Consul for Public Diplomacy and Culture, and She holds a BA in social sciences from Bar Ilan University in Israel and has an extensive background in security. She served as a cybersecurity and intelligence officer in the Israeli Air Force for over 5 years. Additionally, she's worked as a cybersecurity consultant for multiple high-tech companies, leveraging her expertise to enhance organizational resilience. So it is our pleasure to welcome her, especially when it comes to discussing the issues now about the conflict with Iran. And I'm sure she's going to be able to give us more details, answer your questions. And thank you so much, Yael, for joining us.
Thank you, John. Hello, everybody. It's an honor to be here speaking with you. First and foremost, I would like to thank Dillon and ICAN for facilitating this important conversation, and also to John and the City of Beverly Hills. They have been great partners to our consulate, and it's so important that tonight all of us come together from all around California to really, I would think, get educated, but all of you are educators and are very educated regardless. But I think all of us are reading the news, US, Israel, everybody is definitely invested in what's going on, but I think it's still important to do a brief summary of what we have been through so far and what we are facing. So, as you know, on Friday, Israel has launched an attack on Iranian nuclear sites and nuclear infrastructure because it has posed an imminent threat to Israel and also to neighboring countries, and I dare to say the entire Western world. Iran was on the verge of having 9 warheads, nuclear warheads, that they have been enriching uranium for many years in order to get to that stage. Israel was monitoring it closely, and also the US, of course. And the reason why we were deciding on action and deciding on eliminating the threat now, it's because only on Thursday, the IAEA, the International Atomic Agency, published an extensive report showcasing and exposing the Iranian violations of the atomic energy guidelines and safe guidelines. This report is available online. I think it's a great resource because it really shows, and it also proves what we have been saying all along, that the Iranian nuclear program is not for peace, it's not for science, it's not for electricity. It's essentially weaponization and creating a nuclear arsenal for the Islamic regime of Iran. We all know that Iran is not a democracy. It's not a country that wants peace, advocates for peace. Its leaders have constantly said in their remarks up until Friday what they intend to do to Israel, to America. Why are they gearing up for a moment where they can strike and essentially eliminate Israel? And I do want to refer you, because you know, as parents, as teachers, as educators, that words have power, to a very recent remark by the Iranian Supreme Leader Khamenei. He said on May 17, definitely the Zionist regime is the source of corruption, war, and rifts. The Zionist regime, that is a lethal, dangerous, cancerous tumor, should be certainly eradicated, and it will be. The Iranian commander, Brigadier General Mohsen Kazemaini, who is one also of the key figures in the Iranian military, said they, the United States and the Zionists, should know that the Islamic Revolution will continue enhancing its preparedness until it overthrows Israel and liberates Palestine. Those are just a couple of remarks and rhetoric that we've seen from the Iranian regime and its proxies. And we reached a very critical state, essentially the last window of opportunity for us to act against the Iranian nuclear threat. Recently, as I mentioned, they accelerated their nuclear program, their uranium enrichment, and also the building of the nuclear facilities that Israel has been precisely striking in order to eliminate the threat. Also, Iran has an extensive ballistic missile arsenal, long-range missiles, some that can travel over 10,000 miles, reaching far beyond Israel and deep into Europe for reasons that I think we all know, and also showcasing their true intentions with this missile arsenal, which is the biggest in the Middle East, larger than Israel's. So this is also one of our goals here, to illuminate and to really neutralize the missile arsenal that only yesterday, if we're speaking Israel time, had struck a central hospital in Israel, the Soroka Medical Center, which is actually one of the most key hospitals to the Arab Israeli community, because it's right in the city of Beersheba, close to many Bedouin Arab communities. And actually the majority of the hospital staff are Arab Israelis. So it's really one of the most diverse hospitals that we have. And they struck it, and it caused extensive damage to both the hospital facilities and also to its surgical capability in this very critical time of war. By the actions that Israel is doing, that I'm sure we've all seen, by targeting the nuclear scientists, by going after the heads of military, and also, of course, precision strikes on the Iranian nuclear facilities and ballistic missile arsenals, we can see that Iran has gone back at least 20 years in capabilities and what we've had. But the job is not done, and I can say it's going to be at least, I can say, a couple of weeks to months of really rooting out those facilities that are well hidden within Iranian cities, Iranian so-called electrical factories, and also, as I'm sure you've all heard, inside mountains and underground, very, very deep underground, because they knew that what they were doing would eventually be targeted, because it was for weaponization and military purposes and not for civil, electrical, or scientific purposes. Another thing I would like to mention is that in its retaliation against Israel, Iran is not targeting military bases, it's not targeting government buildings, it's targeting civil neighborhoods, hospitals, really trying to I would say, demoralize the spirit of the Israeli people. And also, it really shows how the Iranians are focused on eliminating and eradicating Israeli citizens, Jews. We know that Iran is the head of the octopus, and its tentacles, it's the Houthis, it's Hezbollah, it's the Iranian militias in Iraq and Iranian forces that were dispersed in Syria, and of course Hamas, which was guided and funded by Iran, the Iranian regime, very heavily, and also during the war that we have been facing since October 7th. Another thing that I would like to say is, on Israel's side, as of now, 24 people have been killed, 1,170 people have been injured, and there are currently more than 40 impact sites, more than 6,500 people who have been evacuated, and more than 25,000 of civilian properties which have been destroyed. And may I remind you, we are at war not since Friday, but since October 7, 2023. So you can imagine the impact of all of that to the Israeli economy, to the Israeli spirit. We know that a lot of you maybe know people who are either stranded in Israel or trying to get back to Israel. Our consulate has been actively working to assist in those situations. We know there is a big bottleneck right now. And also, one thing I want to say, because I have the honor of speaking to parents and educators, Iran and other foreign actors are closely tied to the awful rise of anti-Semitism that we have seen here in the United States. Iran has been pushing very toxic rhetoric into, Western countries, universities. We know that although they have their divide, Qatar and Iran are essentially involved in trying to shift the tide and really isolate Israel and isolate Jews and Zionists that don't have to be Jews, just people who believe that Jews have their own country and Israel should exist. Before Friday, our consulate was dealing with two very recent terror attacks that we've seen here in America. One is the Boulder terror attack, which is in our region, and the state of Colorado is one of the states we cover. And we've seen the awful, awful images of peacemakers and peace advocates advocating for our hostages, brutally attacked in daylight by a very radical individual. And merely 2 weeks before that, we've seen two Washington embassy diplomatic staff targeted and executed in the heart of America, in the capital of DC. Again, coming out of a Jewish event, for being Jewish, for being us. So I really want to hear your questions, and I know that things are really confusing right now for us as a Jewish people, as American Jewish people, and also just in general. I really think that you have the voice and power as educators, as parents. You are opinion makers. You are influencing the future generation of America. And it's critical that generation understand what Israel is trying to do and why it's doing what it's doing. So without further ado, please ask your questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Yael. I'll take the first question here, and then if any of our panelists here who have joined in. By the way, I want to welcome. Let's say hello to Nicole real quick. Nicole, hello from Pure K through 12. Welcome. She had some internet challenges, but I'm really glad you're able to join.
Yes, I think the Ayatollah was trying to prevent me from joining our discussion tonight and was very actively engaged in destroying my internet situation. So
we're glad you're back. We're glad you're back. Thank you so much.
thank you.
Yael, I want to ask, we've been focused on Gaza and Hamas, the situation in Gaza after 10/7. There are some people, and again, I want to couch this kind of in the context of where our parents, their children who are students, or our educators who are with us may hear this. Israel once again is attacking another country in the Middle East. Here they're reaching out. This was preemptive. Iran. I actually just watched this evening the latest Piers Morgan episode, which actually was interesting this evening. But they were saying, hey, even the IAEA says that Iran isn't trying to produce a nuclear weapon. And the IAEA, for those who don't know, is the International Atomic Energy Agency, part of the United Nations body, who's meant to monitor the implementation of the Non-Proliferation Treaty. I know that's not true, but can you put the threat in clear kind of terms, and then also paint the picture for how we tie the Islamic Republic to funding Hamas, and really how it's not that you just decided that Iran has been attacking Israel since 10/7, but even before that. If you can give a little bit of color on those two points.
Yes, so to answer your first question, I think that what we have seen since Friday from both international organization and also other countries is that they're trying to de-escalate the situation, because nobody wants to see pictures of massive damage in central Tel Aviv or Iranian fleeing Tehran, and the huge traffic jams that I don't know if some of you saw. It's really concerning, because again, like everything that we have seen, when there are civilians that are involved, the world is very quick to trying to de-escalate. However, as proven clearly in the IAEA report, and also without going too much into intelligence that we have had for a very long time, Iran has accelerated its weaponization process of highly enriched uranium. And also we have seen a very concerning element of trying to fool and, I would say, even trick the international organizations that are charged with supervising. And if there's something that Israel has learned since 10/7 is, when the enemy tells you what they want to do and shows you what they want to do, believe them. And sometimes we think we have a long window to act, to calculate, but when you are attacked by 7 fronts for nearly 2 years, and I would speak for my previous roles, you feel the threat every day, and you prevent things every day that if they were to happen, the entire world will change. It's important to remember that Israel is also working, it's not only preemptive strikes, but it's also preemptive prevention of very, very serious threats that are on our doorstep every day. So I think the major concern right now is how quickly things escalated, especially on Israel's end, because we see the large amount of damage. And also, I think in a way, it's misunderstanding what Israel is truly facing, because we have had two big Iranian ballistic missile attacks since October 7th. I was in Israel in both. Maybe some people here were also. And it was deeply concerning and deeply scary. And I think that if we really want to make a change in the Middle East and change the situation that Israel has been dealing with for, I think, since its founding, of having so much enemies on its border. So I think that it's really important to remember that sometimes we act first and then we show what we did, and sometimes people and nations and organizations would not agree with us, but they would never live with such a threat if it was imposed on their own countries and in populations. So that's to answer your first question. And of course, we are fully complying with the treaties and the agreements that we are signed on, and we are actively speaking with our counterparts, American, European, and also in the UN, because we really want the world to understand why we're doing what we're doing and what we have been facing. To answer your second question, I think Hamas essentially has learned a lot from Iran. It's both in strategy. Iran has been known to play the long game. They calculate, they prepare, they do not rush. And that's how also they got to a stage where they have the largest missile arsenal in the Middle East, and also nearly 9 nuclear warheads. And Hamas, as we've seen, October 7th wasn't a rushed thing. It was heavily calculated. Our hostages that came back are telling us that they had prepared apartments and safe spaces and tunnels, all to support this massive invasion of a sovereign country, as they did on October 7th. So I think a lot of it is driven from Iran and its strategy. Also, we always say, in intelligence, but I think it applies to many other areas, follow the money. And if you follow the money, you'll reach Iran, you'll reach Qatar, you'll reach all of our adversaries who have been giving Hamas a power as a legitimate actor, as a legitimate entity, and not a terrorist organization, as we all know what Hamas is. And now I think people are very focused on Iran, but about 5 soldiers were killed this week in Gaza, on the ground, on areas that Israel has already cleared since October 7th. So they're not sleeping, they're not waiting for things to de-escalate. They're actively working to, again, re-weaponize and rebuild. And also, of course, the fate of our hostages remains unknown. And Iran and other actors in the Middle East have constantly showed us that they see Hamas actions as legitimate, and they hope that they will complete their goal of having a river from the river to the sea of no Jews and just Palestinians and just no Israel. So the two are connected, the two are actively speaking to one another, sometimes more, sometimes less. But when you see Hamas, it's 10 times more than what it could have been without Iran. So it's really they all play towards the same goal, which is to not have Israel as a country.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Nicole, or did you have a question?
Yes, I do. I mean, I have many questions, but so one of the things that Pure K-12 is laser focused on is always trying to educate and advocate into various school districts, but also to constituents, and then to school board candidates, or even candidates and elected officials at the state legislature level, sometimes even in Congress. And what I find really interesting is we've got this really divided political landscape, which also is the case in Israel. However, in Israel, it seems as though the vast majority of people really do understand this existential issue in the same way, regardless of where they are on the political spectrum. And I wonder if, there's things that we can learn about how you were able to get to a point in Israel where you have people from opposing political parties, and I know there's about 27 of them, but maybe on the opposing political spectrum, to really understand this issue, the threat, and the real, what they say and what they do are two different things, and that the playing the long game and really understanding what it is actually about. One thing here that is, I think, very difficult to do is to be able to speak across the political aisle and to explain and discuss these things in a measured way to both parties. And I wonder, what we can learn from how you all are having those conversations, the knowledge and the understanding of the threat, how you deal with it sometimes maybe is a conversation, but the fact that it is a threat is something that we are still struggling with very much here in the States. Most people really fall prey to the propaganda. There's this incredible myth of the Jewish state as being the all-powerful, even though it's the tiniest, and the only one really that lacks the oil that everyone else seems to have in abundance. But I guess my question is, these political conversations and rallying political parties that are really on the opposite end on this issue, what are the training or the information or the data that is used to get both sides to understand things in the same way? That's my first question. I'll have many more later, but
So thank you so much, Nicole. And I think that, as you all know, right up to October 7th, Israel was heavily polarized and divided over many legislative issues, jurisdictional reform. I think most of you know very well the divide it was, and it's still there. Like, we're not trying to paint this picture perfect reality that although we are at war, we just brush those issues under the rug and we continue on. It's still there. I think that one of the things that Israelis have learned since October 7th, and also in this recent conflict with Iran, is that really we all go into the same shelter. And I know it might sound like a cliche, but essentially we are a very diverse society. We are the melting pot of the Jews around the world, really, it's really different to, especially for me as a diplomat, to experience Israel and America on the Jewish level, because it really is so different. But when we go into the same shelter and when we face the same sirens and constant shutdowns because people can't go to work now, they can't go to shop, they can really, they have to pause their lives more than we would ever even thought that is possible for such a small country. And I think that we believe in conversation, and when you have conversation, whether it's in Israel, different groups who are, you know, trying to really bridge that divide, or even here in America when it comes to elected officials and different civil society leaders, we really feel like conversation is the way, and something that is unfortunately paused until we really can get back to normal and the Israeli airspace will open. Our consulate has been working on a big amount of delegations to Israel, bringing different people, different target audiences. And I think that once you see it, once you feel it, even if you come from a critical point of view when it comes to Israel and the government policies, it really gives you that nuanced approach to what is Israel. And that's something that I feel is missing in America, because a lot of the time you see people who self-proclaim themselves as experts, and a lot of people in the age of fast media and zero to none fact checking, they really fall into those self-proclaimed experts, and that might have never been to Israel, but they don't understand what is Israel. And that's really, I think, one of the things that are causing this big divide of opinion and the conflicting narratives. Because when I hear people say Iran has the right to defend itself, and you know that for years it's been one of the most destabilizing, collaborating with countries that want the wars for America and to Israel, of course. You know, they call us the little Satan, while America is the big Satan. So that really baffles me when I think of Israel saying those hollow statements, chanting those hollow slogans, because they really don't understand that they are essentially giving our adversaries and giving America's enemies what they want.
Right.
Again, I think the American society and the American landscape of politics is diverse. It's very, very widespread, unlike Israel, when we are a small country, merely 10 million people. But I do think that we Israelis have realized that coming together at time of hardships, that's the glue that's keeping us together. And I think that's something that we need to remember here as well, especially when American Jews are merely 2% of the American population. So
Yeah.
if we're not united, then you know it's an issue. So I really thank you for your question, because you know there's always room for progress, especially to Israel when we have a lot of different opinions, and that's the beauty of it also.
So maybe after Iran is taken care of, which I fully trust Israel to handle, maybe we can connect again, because I think that the trips you were talking about and bringing bringing elected officials, American elected officials who are not Jewish, and maybe some who are, but not necessarily, to the region to see for themselves is one of the most important things. I think I've been awake for the last 7 days, nonstop, and tracking what's going on. And I think one of the most interesting posts that I saw actually came from Brianna Wu, who is a transgender woman, and she flew to Israel. And I think like 5 minutes later, the war broke out. But she tweeted something. She's back now, and she tweeted something. She said, "I can't actually explain what I experienced. It's unlike anything I have ever experienced. I didn't expect it, and all I want to do is go back." And this is from someone who is incredibly progressive, a trans woman who is very involved in progressive politics, but who has conservative foreign policy ideas and issues. And by the way, same with Caitlyn Jenner, right? So there's this really interesting, and I know that politics in the States is very diverse, but it feels very polarized with only 2 teams at this moment. But to see very, very progressive individuals like Brianna Wu and Caitlyn Jenner really talking about Israel in a way that we all understand Israel, but that the vast majority of elected officials in the United States is certainly at the school board level, but then also at the city level and at the state legislative level. So I would love to collaborate and try to bring as many as possible to see for themselves. Of course, once Israel takes care of business, but that is something that I think would be tremendous.
One thing, I'm sorry for disrupting, but one thing that I have to add is that, of course, we are actively trying to bring Israel here also. So we have a lot of initiatives. Bring Israel to the classroom is one of them. And I really think that until, as you say, things will come down, we have a lot we can do here to really help people understand better what Israel is. And of course, our consulate is happy to collaborate on that as well.
Amazing.
And by the way, for those who are in the LA area, there's a phenomenal exhibit at the Ronald Reagan Presidential Library of the Dead Sea Scrolls. In Israel, they call it the deed to the land. It shows the Jewish connection over thousands of years. So if you're here or accessible, even in San Diego, you can drive up and check it out. It's very cool to see. I did want to welcome Elizabeth. Thank you so much for joining. Hello, hello. I don't know if you saw, Elizabeth, we did feature your AB 715 article in the beginning. So thank you for doing that. And if you have any questions, just go ahead and interrupt. Anybody else have questions? Amy? Any questions?
I have a question.
Go ahead, Anna.
So one of the things that I was hoping you could direct us to is, one of the things I think we can do to help Israel right now is to help educate our community about Israel and also about what's going on. So I wondered if you had any suggestions for the best. I mean, I have my places where I get information, but I wondered if you had suggestions for people about where to get the most updated information, and then also any materials to help us explain to people or send to people about Iran. Because sometimes, like, I've had friends that are like, what is this whole Iran thing? Like, why is Israel even involved with it? And so, like, just like basic stuff like that. I wonder if the consulate has materials that we can try to spread among our own community, and also could be used in an educational context to educate educators, because probably as we look forward to things, they're going to be teaching this on some capacity, so helping them get educated on it would be helpful.
So first and foremost, I think that LA and definitely our region is not only filled with incredible Jewish organizations and Israel advocacy organizations that are promoting discussions exactly like ICAN and also Peer 12, but we also have the luxury of having so much Persian and Iranian born speakers that I think now are trying to give their testament, their story to what Iran is. So a lot of the time, we consulate, we represent the state of Israel, and our voice is critical when it comes to Israel. But if you want to learn what Iran is, what they have been doing to their civilians, how many human rights violations they had, and how many Americans died as a direct result of Iranian aggression, and also Iranian backed terror. And I think besides the IAEA report, that I think is the most recent testament to why Iran was on the verge of a nuclear weapon and why it needed to be stopped, there are a lot of things leading up to that. And regarding resources, I can say that we have a lot of past statements, past researches that have been done both by the Israeli INSS, which is a highly esteemed research center, and of course also by American institutions. So to give one clear answer, I think, is really to look at a lot of different sources and verify those sources, because when you try and talk about a subject in the classroom, and also I think parents talking to their kids, especially if it's Jewish kids or Israeli immigrant kids, you really need to show them that we didn't invent history. We didn't rewrite it. We didn't only this Friday realize that Iran is bad. It has been showed throughout history since 1979, since the revolution, and there are a lot of good sources. And I think that ICAN has also been doing a great job of having the newsletter and the update, because they really understand also Americans and their needs to have that information in a way that can reach the classrooms and convince elected officials and really bring what we have been dealing with to the classroom. So thank you for your question. And I really like,
I think we really need to do a better job in their community, though. We need like simple things, that I can send, like my friend who's not Jewish, when she has questions about it. Like I consume a lot of information, right? But just to know what is like that one thing that, like we as a community need to have that thing that we can forward to people. Like we need to be able to have those things that we can send to other parents or other Jews, to be honest. I mean, there's been incidences here where people are saying this is making us more, unsafe. This shouldn't have happened. And I completely disagree with that on so many different levels. But for me to pull together all these different links to send them to try to give them a basic education is like, it's hard as a person, a parent who's busy and working, and so it's like, I feel like we as a community need to do better to try to give people simple things that we can send to our colleagues, to our friends, to try to educate people on a super basic level. And that's going to be different information than we may be consuming ourselves. So that's my request, is just that we as a community, can just do a better job of, telling Israel's story. And we need to be able to do that. We need to try to talk to each other better and spread some things.
I'll say, just because I've been on both sides, I've worked for the Israeli government, and now I'm on the nonprofit side. It's a challenge that we struggle with on an ongoing basis, and things happen very quickly. So I think after this call, maybe we can get together and try to find and put together resources going into next week that will help with this conversation. And this is a very dynamic environment. But Anna, you're 1,000% right, and that falls on ICAN. We need to do a better job of that. and then we'll interface Yael as appropriate with the Israeli government to get accurate information.
So can I just jump in on that, because I think one of the biggest challenges is that we as a community we pride ourselves, and Yael even said it, we are diverse, we have nuance, we want to be able to give the full picture and not just a simplified, storyline. However, our opposition and our enemies do the exact opposite. Everything is whittled down to the othering, and it's always, and the words oppressor and oppressed. I mean, I think that's why so much of what was going on in education here triggered so many Jews and Israelis living in this country, is because we know what that word is used for over there and it's used here, and they are so quick to be over, the this equals this, and we would never do that because we know it's so much more complicated and complex. And so, Anna, I think that is one of the biggest challenges, is how do you condense something that's really complex, that's been going on for, I think, not just for the last 2 years since October 7th. I mean, you could also say back to 1947. You could also say back to 1929. You could also say back to, 67 AD, right? It's like, it's complicated. And we always want to give justice to the full story. And so that doesn't all fit on a little poster board that says, this equals that. Whereas that's what our opposition is doing. And so I think that's the challenge of trying to convey those messages. I think, that's somehow in Israel, everyone really seems to understand the existential issues. And I think it's incumbent upon us to try to figure out how to do that in a way, Anna, that makes it short and easy to digest. I'm not exactly sure how that can be done, but we've got to figure it out. I mean, that's a challenge.
You have the benefit of having a Gentile on the team, and me. I'm always critical of us, of our community and the Jewish side, treating everything like it's a Seder dinner and the 4 questions and debating. So we will work together.
On the other hand, on the other hand,
Exactly.
on the group, and then it goes on and on.
But I do feel like we need to be able to tell, like just the way you laid it out, Yael, it was just, I've read so many things over the past, few days. I mean, I think we all have, but you laid it out in such a clear, pretty concise way. And I don't know, it'd just be nice to be able to pass that on, in a way that's going to because we all want to do what we can to help Israel. And I think that's something that we all can do. And so I would just, put that out.
Thank you. And next we have Elizabeth. Thank you. You've been so patient. Go ahead, Elizabeth.
Oh, thanks. I actually, it's kind of a perfect setup, because one of the things, I'm actually not in LA. I'm just, they treat me like I belong. And
you do.
We're all about diversity and inclusion. So
exactly.
You are in California, so that counts.
I am. I'm in San Francisco. But one of the things that I think that we diaspora Jews are really struggling with, I know that we are struggling with this, I'm struggling with this very much up here in San Francisco, is that Israel is at war in actual physical warfare. And here in the US, we American diaspora Jews are very much engaged in information warfare, where we have been besieged with information warfare and psychological warfare. And the only antidote to that that we have found, and that I think we are finding collectively, is clarity, and just getting that sort of getting this kind of, I mean, that's what I was trying to do in my article, was just to kind of keep getting back to what is the actual clarity, because disputing the premise is one of the hardest things to do in any kind of debate. When not accepting the framing of the oppressor oppressed way of focusing on the issue is just rejecting that has been, I think, a huge challenge, because we're constantly being we're constantly being pigeonholed, and I think that there's there's an inclination among our opponents with regard to Israel in our country. Um, People want to frame us as oppressors, and we're going, well, let's go back and look at the facts. I mean, I'm a math teacher, so I think about science, and to me the issue of what lives on top of what, no one is exempt from time and space. And so one of the questions that I know that a lot of our community have been asking people here is, well, if this mosque is built on top of our temple, how can you make sense of that? If we're colonizers, how could we possibly make sense of that? That's not the way physics works. The laws of sedimentation apply to us all. And anyway, I just wanted to, I guess it was more of a comment than a question, that I just have really appreciated so much our Israeli family helping us to gain that clarity. And also, it's not just clarity, it's something also that Haviv Rettigor talks about a lot. It's about confidence. We don't have a lot of confidence about our own story, about the Jewish story in general. And so we are learning from you, I think, all the time, how to claim our story, how to own our story. And so to me, I just want to say thank you.
Thank you, Elizabeth. It was very, very insightful. And I do agree that your observation regarding language and usage of terms that are factually incorrect when it comes to Israel, colonialism, oppressors, may I say genocide, those are things that are destructive because they catch so fast, and people get, I think, very, very much of an emotional response to this horrendous accusation. And by taking a stand against Israel, even if you're in a position of an educator, of a teacher, of a principal, of a professor, they really feel it as them being just and speaking up. But we all see, and I think a lot of people are also seeing, that by doing that, they are not only, I think, I wouldn't say overstepping, but they're really taking their role as opinion leaders and as educators to a place that can be very scary to Jewish students, and also to students who feel like this is not the full truth and they have other opinions. But also it puts us in a situation that instead of being focused on, let's say, the actual war and the actual things that are happening, we are fighting this information war and also trying to really stand up for what we know is right, but is constantly being questioned and misinterpreted by a lot of key figures here. But that's why I truly think that the biggest impact that we can have is on early education and education in general, because that's the root, that's the start of, an, I would say, an adult mind and forming an opinion about something. And from what you know and Dylan has shared with us many times, it starts as early as elementary school, which is very concerning, and the age is continually getting younger when those things are starting. And yeah, that's not an easy fight, and I really feel like it's also unfair because, as I said, we're the minority again, and we have to stand up against the growing majority of misinformed individuals. So thank you so much. And I really feel like especially teachers are very keen and aware to the issue because you see it firsthand. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
So I do want to I do want to say very quickly, we're at the top of the hour. Yael, if you can go for another 20 minutes or so, that would be great. I will say that even after an hour of briefing, we still have over 100 people watching, 106 people watching live now. So thank you so much, everyone watching. And I know we have a couple of school board questions in the chat. I'll get to those in a second. But Amy, if you can go ahead.
Thank you very much. Yael, what an amazing presentation. And I thank you so much. My question has to do with questions that I anticipate students will have, which is based on things that they hear, not just the rhetoric that you've mentioned, but students want to know, and I'm not sure always how to answer, why is Israel always so much in the news? Why is everybody so interested in what Israel is doing? And also, I feel that students take an attitude towards Israel that they sort of take towards the picked on kid in class, which is that they wonder if that kid has done something to invite it. So my question is really twofold. How to answer students who ask that question, and why is it always Israel that's targeted? But also, why did Israel have to be the one to respond to Iran? And I was wondering if there's a wise way to answer that question for students who are maybe 18 and younger. Thank you.
So thank you so much, Amy. And it's really great to have you as, I think, a beacon for many of us with your experience in education and also the insight that you've had on the issue that I remember you told me it's been over a decade of just this rising, I would say, bias and isolation of Israel in the classroom, Jewish students, and really everything is so polarized. But one of the things that, to answer your question, I think the younger students, they know of Israel, of course, thanks to the media, but also because it's closely tied with America. I mean, we pride ourselves, and I think we've heard that also from different presidents all over the years, of being a great ally to America, a strategic partner. We have a lot of collaborations, we have a lot of mutual interests, and the weight that Israel has as such a small country within the American public is, I think, also attributed to the spatial relationship and the depth of the collaboration that we have. And I can proudly say also from my previous position that the United States, regardless of, political leadership, I mean, boots on the ground and the people who are actively working to make sure that Israel exists and it's safe, that hasn't changed. And when you approach why America has been a great ally to Israel for many, many years and the other way around, I think it really comes down to what we have been doing all along, which is providing a state, and may I say a sanctuary, to the Jewish communities and to the Jewish people who have been threatened throughout history in their respective states, places that they have been lived in, but also it's the democracy in the Middle East that is fully aligned with Western values. We have seen some progress. I think one of the main things that is really might be even groundbreaking to students is knowing that Israel has made peace with numerous Arab countries in the Middle East, peace that's holding up until now. And, you know, when people try to say it's us versus them mentality, and there's Israel and there's all those other countries in the Middle East who have done nothing wrong to be constantly attacked by Israel, they leave out the countries who are aligned with Israel, are aligned in America, and trying to fight this axis of evil and anti-democratic values. Also, I think that especially the Jewish students are usually, they are outnumbered because, you know, classrooms are, they do not, especially in the public schools, they do not represent, you know, the full Jewish community. It's usually a big mix. And I think when those students are being questioned about Israel, sometimes blamed because what they see in the media and what their friends are telling them, the first thing they need to hear is from an authority figure or a teacher that them being Jewish has nothing to do with the policies of Israel and the strategic decisions that Israel has been making to keep its existence. So I think that everybody here, parent to teacher, know that those kids don't deserve what they have been. It's wrong. It's isolating. It's also, it's a double standard because you don't see, without naming other countries, but you don't see other immigrant community here or other faiths as targeted as Jews when it comes to Israel. And I really think that, as you all have been doing, we need to constantly remind administration that it's not okay to, even when they want to raise an opinion about Israel, even when there's a tough question in the classroom, it's not okay for a Jewish teacher or a Jewish student to be targeted because of their identity. So I know that unpacking Israel in a classroom can be hard because, of course, if we're looking at an American point of view, there is a long, long history that it might not be relevant or understandable to non-Jews and also to just students. But I think you have a lot of places and similarities that you can really use Israel as a good example to why America is America and why it has been the most strong force in history. And one thing I would say about the Dead Sea Scrolls, one of the things that we have been doing, bringing different groups into the exhibition, is showing them that it doesn't have to be even related to the state of Israel. Jews have been indigenous to the land of Israel for thousands of years. And when you look at the concept of indigenous people, and when you look at world history, the Jews and our heritage, our story can be a great example to students to show resilience and to show how much we have suffered to get to a point when we have our state, and also when Israel is constantly struggling to try and make never again a reality. So yeah, thank you for your question. I think that every teacher has been facing with their very difficult questions, and it's definitely not easy, especially in this climate. But I know you have the tools and the skills to really try and and give students the feeling that they can be educated about Israel through school and not through TikTok or false information that's floating around.
Thank you so much.
Perfect. I want to get to it's more of a comment from trustee Jennifer Jacobson, who is a school board member up north. She says, I'm on a school board for a high school district, and our district is really struggling with teaching on these topics. Many teachers are afraid to touch it and don't know what resources to use. Unfortunately, I think Israeli-produced materials would be viewed as biased, while the self-proclaimed experts you mentioned are not scrutinized in the same way. I have to agree with Jennifer. I will say that, again, as somebody who has been on both sides of this, where I have formerly been an employee of the Israeli government, I think it's important that we do not treat Israeli primary sources as less than any other country. So if we would treat American, which is, the United States is a democracy, if we treat those government produced resources as primary sources, certainly Israel should be treated the same. But Jennifer, definitely take your point, and that's something that we need to deal with as a community, and tap into those resources that diplomats like Yael make available to us. I'll also just quickly bring up a comment from Gretchen, who's also on a school board. Gretchen says, I too am on a unified school board and have tried to share ICAN webinar content. Thank you, Gretchen, for doing that with our district staff and fellow trustees. In particular, with regard to ethnic studies, staff did share it with other trustees, but I never received any feedback from one staff person from the ICAN information. The only feedback they gave me were pro-ethnic studies articles. It is so frustrating to try to educate those who are in charge of curriculum development in our district. It's a frustration that we all share. Thank you again, Gretchen, for sharing the ICAN content. We've been in partnership with Pure K through 12, and Nicole and I have done several presentations on ethnic studies this year. And again, Gretchen, to your point, it just shows that a lot of this is ideological and politically driven, rather than trying to produce accurate information.
I would like to just also thank Gretchen here publicly. Last night was a very uncomfortable board meeting in her district, and she fought hard for our students, and the vote did not go our way, but there certainly was enough concern brought to the meeting and sent through the board. And so, Gretchen, thank you so much for everything you do. And we're going to continue to find ways to bring these resources. I want to say, just in response to something earlier, in California, 6th grade content standards for social studies, so for history, requires every 6th grader in California to learn about ancient civilizations, and that includes the ancient Israelites, the Hebrews. Oftentimes, there's not enough time, or the curriculum is pushed, too far to the end of the school year, and it's not covered. And so students then go into 7th grade, and then they, study the rise of Christianity and then the rise of Islam. There's got to be a way where we can advocate towards the school districts and the curriculum developers to bump it up a little bit and be able to utilize some of the consulate's information, and maybe field trips, up to Los Angeles to see some of these exhibits. But many of them go into 7th grade not having the baseline of Jewish ancient civilization history. And I wonder sometimes if the rise of Islam and Christianity are covered in a way that talks about colonialism, because if you look at, the Middle East before the rise of Islam, almost everybody in the Middle East, except for the Jews, were Christian. So, there's a lot here that could be like very basic, information that we're getting either in 6th grade or in 7th grade, that if we're able to convey that to the students by the time they get to high school, where things really heat up, certainly with ethnic studies, and then definitely in college, they might have a good enough foundation with this actual real history to kind of know the difference between the propaganda and what they learned. So that's just something I want to put out there, and very eager to work with other school districts to figure out a way to elevate, I guess, the 6th grade academic standards for that.
And if may I add just one more comment, and thank you, Nicole. One of the resources that we offer is the IRA definition of anti-Semitism. And I know there are a lot of other definitions, but what IRA, which is the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance, have done is that they included anti-Zionism as the form of anti-Semitism. And I think that really connecting to what you said about the history of Zionism and Israelites and the Hebrews and everything we know that has happened way before there was a state of Israel, and even there was the United States of America. But when, especially this year, because Israel chairs the IRA organizations, were the presidents this year, and a lot of countries and institutions have adopted it because we truly think it exemplifies and unpacks what is anti-Semitism. And the fact that anti-Semitism is not included in DEI and ethnic studies are really, I think, distorting the history of just the formation of the Middle East as we know it today in Israel.
Yeah.
I think that's another tool for educators, because of course you can adopt the definition and do nothing, but there are so many resources, and also just the mere understanding by your institution that anti-Zionism cannot be separated from anti-Semitism. It's a step in the right direction. So we do have those resources, and Dillon can happily assist us in connecting your institutions to IRA. Because I think once you define something, a lot of the confusion and a lot of also resistance, some people might not accept it, but it's still a step in the right direction. So that's another resource that we encourage.
One of the things that, John, if do you want to make a comment? I see. Okay. One of the things, Yael, perhaps, I know that Israel is. I think Israel is the president. Israel is holding the presidency now for IHRA. So if there's any opportunity, this group tonight was put together quickly, just in the context of Operation Rising Lion, but perhaps over the summer and maybe leading into before the high holidays, we can put together this group again and have a little bit more of a lead time and get a larger audience. We'll have the same. These are again from across the state, folks that we work with, from Northern California down to San Diego, but maybe having a representative of the delegation to IHRA speak and address our education community. I think that would be a great follow-up. To this.
I love that.
We would be happy to support that. Yeah, of course.
Beautiful. If you guys don't have any other questions, I have one closing question for Yael before we go. Anyone else?
I just had a quick question, Yael. This is totally unrelated to what we've spoken about before. I've seen a lot of pictures of, homes. You were talking about the different people whose homes have been destroyed in Israel, and you were talking about the number of evacuees. What happens with the evacuees? Like, where do they go? How is the Israeli government helping them? I'm just curious. I haven't read a lot about it.
So unfortunately, this is already a pretty tested and proven mechanism that we've had since the big evacuations of the northern region communities and also the Gaza envelope communities right after October 7th. So most people either go to hotels that are subsidized by the country, or they get a compensation and they can use it to find alternative rentals. And of course, some of them stay with family. There is a wide set of options for those evacuees, because really it has been a reality for many, many Israelis. As someone who grew up in the northern part of Israel, I can say that a lot of my extended family were evacuated. And yeah, it's not ideal, but where the state and really the authorities are trying to take care of everybody. It's much less, however, than what we've had at the start of the war. So now it's more easier to accommodate this amount of evacuees.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Well, I do want to say again, we've gone almost an hour and a half, and again, we have 104 people watching live, 106. So thank you so much for everybody who's watching. We're actually winding down now. Yael, I just wanted to kind of ask a question, but maybe give you an opportunity to address the young American Jewish, Israeli American, Persian Jewish, Russian Jewish. We have all sorts of young Jews who are students who may be looking at what the state of Israel is doing. And I hope they're proud that Israel took decisive action, not just for the protection of the state of Israel, but for the protection of all of us in the West and in a Western civilization. So if you have any words of encouragement or a message for the young people in our community, what would you tell them?
I mean, they're superheroes, really. You know, it's one of the things that I find the most amazing and the most impressive is really the resilience of the American youth and the Jewish youth, because they didn't choose for any of this to happen. And they really stood against, I would say, even friends, lifelong friends, turning against them, authority figures, and really everything they knew has changed. And for better or worse, this is the new reality. This is a new generation that its challenges are, I think, more complex than any of us understands, because of social media and TikTok and all of those alternative universes that teens and children are living in. But I go almost every Shabbat to different Hillels and Chabad around our region, and meeting those students and seeing how many of them actually feel inspired now and feel like they have something to stand up for, and they want to be active. They want to talk about Israel. They want to do Israel-related activities. It really makes me proud, and I truly think that especially from our side, like, if that's the future of our society and this is our future leaders and individuals, like, I truly feel like we have a very, very strong and quality group of remarkable teens and teenagers and high schoolers. And I just want to say that I'm amazed by how they have been handling all of that. And also, I know that they look up to teachers who speak up, parents who show example of not shying away from your identity. And I truly feel like it's a rough patch, but they are an essential part of our survival and our resilience. So just thank you. You're superheroes. Thank you.
Amen. I agree with that sentiment. Thank you so much, I just there's one last comment I want to show that says Israeli youth are pretty amazing too. So the resilience of the Israeli youth and the Israeli people is on the stage for the world to see, and we're all rooting for Israel's success, not just for your survival, but for all of us moving forward. So I want to say thank you, Yael, for taking this time. I know it's a late hour. And you've given us a lot to think about, and you've educated us. And hopefully, we know we're in summertime right now in K through 12, but we continue to plan to engage throughout summer and to start strong again in the fall. So thank you so much for taking the time, and we'll see you again soon.
Thank you all so much. It's been an honor. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.